I think creatives love seeking the validation of other creatives, and it can be intimidating to go into a platform that feels the opposite of creative.
Talk about social media, using that for networking, and we're going to focus in on a particular area that I think a lot of creatives don't really look at, LinkedIn.
But at the end of the day, your customers aren't other creatives, they're business professionals.
Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Tato Datsun. We are 23 Journeys, a network creative. I'm here with my lovely partner in crime, Naomi Datsun. How are you?
I'm doing good today. Thank you.
Awesome. So we had a great episode with Chris Gittings, and we decided to bring him back. Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Honored to be back again. This is exciting. I loved speaking with you last time, so I'm really excited to be with you again.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. I mean, we got great feedback about all the points you hit with networking and such. And one of the things I wanted to really talk about and focus on, because you are like the wizard that I know, is we're talking about social media, using that for networking. And we're going to focus in on a particular area that I think a lot of creatives don't really look at, LinkedIn. A lot of people looked at LinkedIn, where LinkedIn is more for, you're an insurance agent, you're some kind of sales, but I think there's a lot of ways that even us creatives can use LinkedIn to our advantage and such. And I thought, well, Chris Gittings would be the perfect person to talk about that.
Well, yeah, I think we're going to have a fun conversation.
Well, why do you think creatives overlook a social media app like LinkedIn?
I think it's a matter of personalities. If you were to look at, Facebook as a persona and say, who is Facebook? What does Facebook feel like when I'm interacting with it? What is that person? You might say someone who's maybe a parent who wants to share pictures of their kids, someone who is politically engaged and wants to talk about or complain about things that are going on in the world, someone who loves like history or watching videos that look really pretty or, kind of TikTok-like. There's just a certain vibe to the platform. And it's like that on every platform. Every platform has its own vibe and its own community and its own culture. And sometimes, engagement that works really well on one platform won't work super well on another. I think creatives love seeking the validation of other creatives. And there are certain platforms where they generally congregate and hang out. And it can be intimidating to go into a platform that feels the opposite of creative, which is, where all the pen pushers are, so to speak, and to then begin operating there as well. But at the end of the day, when you look at who your clients are, your customers aren't other creatives, they're business professionals. Companies have more money to spend on your services, and so it's important to find ways to break through with them and to get them aware of your business and your offerings and to make it easy for them to work with you.
Awesome. And you being a LinkedIn expert, one thing that you offer is once a month you have a free LinkedIn online training course. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I do a few things online. I organize a virtual networking group once a month. I organize a virtual peer advisory group for business owners once a month. And quarterly, I organize a 3-part series on how to use LinkedIn more effectively to grow your business. It's called Leveraging LinkedIn to Grow Your Business. And it's just a very detailed, actionable, 3 hours of content spread over the course of several weeks, where we just really dive into information in a way that anyone who's participating can come away from that meeting ready to take action and knowing how to take action on steps that are going to, immediately drive them more clients.
Very good. Wow. That's pretty good. And then you said it's you have like a certain time, it's like beginning of the month, middle month, like when do you usually do these?
Yeah, I do them roughly once a quarter. And there's 3 talks. I do 2 weeks between each talk. So I actually have one coming up this upcoming Tuesday. And then that's going to be part 2 of the current 3-part series I'm in. And that one's actually going to be on content. And then 2 weeks after that, we're going to do part 3, which is going to cover, it's going to be a continuation of part 1. And it's going to go into more advanced, more detailed strategies for building relationships through LinkedIn. Because there are so many different ways you can approach somebody and build a relationship. You could approach someone and say, hey, I want you to use my product or service. You can approach someone and say, hey, I want to offer you something for free, a free consultation or a free book or a free resource or a white paper. You might invite someone to an event. You might invite someone to a webinar. You might invite someone to become a referral partner. And you might invite someone to your newsletter. I can go on and on and on. There are so many different ways to initiate relationships with people. And some of those strategies are complicated. They require a lot of planning on the back end. So I will go through in detail on some of these more advanced strategies, what you actually do beginning to end so that you can implement a approach to building relationships that is more complex than you might otherwise realize. One example that I've been experimenting with a lot lately is organizing lunches for executives, bringing together a bunch of CEOs of small and mid-sized companies and taking them out to a really fancy restaurant and using that as a business development strategy. And that sounds kind of crazy, but there's a methodology and the methodology behind the how and the why is what makes the effort successful. So I'm going to cover that in our talk.
Okay. Very cool, man. So creatives, we obviously like to make things look great.
Yeah.
Whether you're an artist that draws, photographer, videographer, and everything. LinkedIn is getting better at it, but they're very limited on how to really make your stuff really pop or like pretty colors or, all the different types of stuff. What are ways that a creative could optimize their LinkedIn profile so that way it can make the people kind of understand, oh, wait, this person's a creative. Like it shows people know, bam, okay, I know what this person does or anything.
Yeah. So talking about posting on LinkedIn is going to be a whole separate conversation from what you do on your own profile. One thing that LinkedIn does on your profile, which is nice, is that you can pin posts. So you can pick out 3 of your favorite posts and have them be visible to anyone who sees your profile, which can help highlight your material. You also have the ability to link some of your content on your profile as well. LinkedIn recognizes that there are a variety of professionals who are going to have a need to use LinkedIn to display their work, and they have the tools built in that support that. And many creatives, even though they may not spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, most of them have LinkedIn accounts, and they recognize that there are times that they need to use them in their professional development. So those tools exist. And putting your portfolio on LinkedIn is surprisingly straightforward to do. Another small thing, and I know this isn't LinkedIn, but if you are a creative and you're going around networking and you have a paper card, it's okay to have a paper card. In fact, I recommend you have one. But in addition to that, you should definitely get a digital business card as well. And the tool I like to use is MTAP, but there are other tools out there as well. And what's really nice about using a digital business card is that you can have your portfolio sit inside your business card. So when you exchange your content information with somebody, they can actually access your portfolio really easily. And also, there's different creative ways you can set up your portfolio to be viewed. So I would definitely recommend that any creative, in addition to having a paper business card, gets a digital business card and make sure that their portfolio is on their profile as well.
Right. Okay. So now we talked about how the page could look. Let's talk about posting.
Yeah.
How important do you say consistency of posting is on LinkedIn?
Yeah. It's less important than Instagram. I'll tell you that much. On LinkedIn, my attitude is that it is more important to put out great content than it is to put out content regularly. But of course, if you do both, that's not bad either. Every time you put out a post on LinkedIn, the platform is saying, do you make good posts? And it's using a bunch of different metrics to determine how good your post is. How long are people staying on your post? Yes, LinkedIn is measuring how long people sit on your post. Are they clicking on your post? Are they looking through all the images that are attached? Are they reading the whole post? The best posts on LinkedIn right now, and this changes, over time, what posts are optimal for the platform. But right now, there are posts that have at least one picture, ideally of you, ideally with you smiling in the picture, and also a ton of text. Why? LinkedIn wants people to stop on a post and read it and engage with it. They want them to comment, they want them to share, they want them to like, but really they want them to stop. And a long post makes people stop for longer. More pictures, people stop for longer. more clicks. So that's the name of the game. If you're like, I have a friend who's a professional painter. And so he's putting out a lot of content, but he's not putting up like a picture of his painting and then just posting it and letting it sit. He's sharing a short video or a picture of him holding up his painting, smiling with his painting. You want to put yourself out there on LinkedIn with your work, because it's not just about showing off your work, especially to other creatives. And this is really the difference between LinkedIn and other platforms. If you're creating content on LinkedIn, you're doing it to engage buyers, not your fellow creatives. So a lot of the rules you might follow to make your art perfect so that it can be viewed and judged by your peers is out the window when it comes to LinkedIn. All that matters on LinkedIn is engagement and sales. So put yourself on there because your brand's important. Your face is important. Show off your work. Highlight why your work matters, why it's interesting, what makes it special. And when you think about the mentality of a person when they're going through posts on any platform, thinking, should I engage with this or not? If they're scrolling through and they see a picture that you did, they might not even realize it's your picture, and they might keep scrolling. But if they see a picture of you smiling with your picture, the impression they get is, oh, this person is proud of their work. I'm friends with this person. I want to see them be successful. I'm going to make a comment saying, you go, girl, and then like the post. And if there's additional pictures, I'm going to look through those too because I'm curious. I want to see what my friend's up to, right? Well, now from LinkedIn's perspective, whoa, that post with a picture of the creator and their work is performing a whole lot better than the post they put out that was just a picture of their work. That's going to perform a lot better. I'm going to put this in front of more people. And one thing that you'll be able to track on LinkedIn is impressions. Impressions are just how many times LinkedIn put your piece of content in front of an account such that it showed up in their feed. When they scrolled down, it appeared technically. And there's actually two versions of impressions that matter. There's unique impressions and there's impressions in general. Because sometimes LinkedIn will share a piece of content with someone several times. So you want to make sure that you're tracking both the number of times that your work's being seen and the number of unique people who are seeing it. But yeah, we could go into more detail on several different things around being an effective poster.
Right. Do you have any questions, Naomi?
Well, we talked about there's the page itself, which is kind of like your resume and stuff like that. Then there's posts and all that you can post on the walls and everything that you were just talking about. But then a lot of times when I'm on there, I'll get notifications of people sliding in recruiters or different people reaching out to me and stuff like that, where then I'm like, oh, well, this is just spam, or these people they're all the way out in the other side of the country or something like that. Do you recommend reaching out to people and stuff like that still through the platform, or just kind of stick to your posts?
I really recommend reaching out to people. Anyone who knows me knows I'm the reach out to people guy. And it's true. Everybody on LinkedIn has an experience where, or many experiences, that they're familiar with how when you go on the platform, there are random people who reach out to you, generally trying to sell you stuff, and it's not a positive experience. It all starts with a connection request from a stranger. And they'll say something like, George, your profile looks really nice. Let's connect. And it's something fluffy like that. Or they'll jump right into a pitch in the connection request. We wanted those two things. And you click accept, and then 5 seconds later, there's a message from them. It's a paragraph or 2 paragraphs long. It's like, here's our offering. You should check it out. Care to sign up? And then if you don't reply back to them 3 days later, they're like, I'm sorry if I was too forward before, but let me know if you're open to have a conversation, right? And it feels tacky. It's a lot of information, and generally don't even read it. You just know by looking at the blob of text, oh, here we go again.
Yeah.
And you click off. And it's not like it's ruining your experience on LinkedIn, but it's an annoyance. And so you might kind of think to yourself, I don't want to be one of those people. I don't want to be bothering strangers and making their days worse. And I'm glad you feel that way, because we should be trying to do good in the world. But there's a reason why salespeople exist. Marketers are all about building brands that attract buyers in. And some people argue that's all we need. We don't need salespeople. And I actually, respect that belief. But salespeople do exist. Companies have salespeople. Why do companies hire salespeople and not just marketers? It's because sometimes for some products, it's not enough to simply create a brand and to build a brand and to attract engagement and to have people see your stuff. Sometimes you have to be proactive in building relationships and adding value. And the example I like to give is the example of an electron beam welding business. So an electron beam welder is a specialty type of welder that has special capabilities. Like, you might have two pieces of metal and you can, use regular arc welding and weld them together. But what if you have one metal alloy that doesn't play well with another metal alloy and you need them to stick together in a way that they can be used on a jet fighter with rapid changes in pressure and temperature and moisture without falling apart? You might need a fancier, more expensive welding, like electron beam welding. But you're not going to know that exists if you're not in the field. Salespeople go out there to project managers at these defense companies and say, hey, there's this new capability that exists, and I want to make you aware of it. And if you're aware of it, you're going to realize that there are certain applications where it's going to lower your costs, improve your capabilities, improve your turnaround. And that's why salespeople exist. It's to proactively identify opportunities to add value. Now, not all salespeople live by that mantra, but if salespeople do their jobs well and do them correctly, the size of our country's GDP increases because professionals are unlocking ways to add value to their businesses that would have never realized on their own. So sales requires you to initiate relationships. Mm-hmm. Now, let's say you approach somebody you don't know, or let's say you're looking at approaching somebody you don't know, and you're like, do I reach out to them? There's a test I like to use. And the test is, do I think in my gut and in my heart that this person I'm about to reach out to is more likely than not to come out of a conversation with me glad that we met and glad that we took time together? And if I think it's more likely than not that they're not going to be glad that I reached out, don't. If you think it is more likely than not, even slightly, not only can you reach out to them, not only should you feel empowered to do so, but you should feel obligated to do so. Because to not do so is to deprive them of value. We don't want to deprive people of value, right? Our whole job's to add value proactively through our expertise. Additionally, again, I'm going to use that electron beam welding example again. When you reach out to these businesses, let's say someone has a special need around a ship. They're using a certain kind of metal on their ship and they need it to work a certain way. And you share your capability with them. They try it out and they run into some issues. And you help them resolve those issues to get the outcome that they're looking for. You've just gone through a cycle of problem, solution, outcome, where you've gained expertise in the application of your tool or service. The more of those cycles you go through, the more expertise you have in the application of your line of tools and services to support people in a broad variety of situations and applications. When you have that expertise, that adds additional value to those buyers, right? And you become an even more necessary part of the business ecosystem. So, yes, you should initiate relationships. And it's also important for people to realize that there's so many different situations where you are a salesperson, even if you don't think you are, right? Of course, salespeople are salespeople. Business owners are often also salespeople, are responsible for sales.
Yeah.
Let's say you're looking for a job. You're a salesperson.
You have to sell yourself.
Well, you are looking to close one deal, which is employment.
Yeah.
And your prospects are companies that are hiring. Once you think of the process of looking for a job in that framework, where it's like, okay, I'm a salesperson, not just a job seeker, you start using sales tactics, sales tools, sales strategies that will give you a really powerful edge over your other applicants. And we'll get into this later probably, but I really believe in LinkedIn Sales Navigator. And I help a lot of people who are looking for jobs just on the side, just to be helpful. I don't charge them or anything. And I tried to get them set up with Sales Navigator as part of their job searches because you can use Sales Navigator very effectively to build relationships with potential employers.
That's incredible. We'll definitely touch on that in a bit. Sticking with what we are initially just talking about with now when reaching out, like how Naomi talked about with people, I had a gentleman once before tell me that what he used to do, he used to actually, and I think he still does it, is not only would he send like one of those invite messages like, hey, I'd like to connect, blah, blah, blah. He also in his messages would leave an audio message. Have you ever experienced that before where somebody would actually leave you like, hey, I'm Tyler Datsun, such and such, love to connect, or say something like, what do you think about that kind of strategy?
So when you send a connection request on LinkedIn specifically, you can only send text. and there's a 300 character limit, including spaces, including indentations, for what you can send out. I believe that connecting with strangers on LinkedIn is important. Not just building relationships with strangers, but connecting with them. Because if someone's not connected to you, the only things you can do to engage them are send them a connection request or send them something we call an in-mail. If they're connected to you, you have their phone number, their email address, they'll see your posts, you can invite them to events, you can invite them to your LinkedIn newsletter, and you can message them as many times as you want. Not just saying that you should, but you can, right? So there's a lot of different potential touch points you can have with your connections once you have them. And LinkedIn allows you to have up to 30,000 connections. So connecting is not a certification that you have a relationship. It's a stepping stone on the path to building one. And there are people out there who are going to disagree with me on this, and I really respect their disagreement, where they're like, you should only connect with people you know. I think there are a bunch of good reasons why someone might follow that strategy, but just as far as the strategies I'm concerned with being able to share, they all require you to be proactive in connecting. Now, to your point, to tie this back into your original question, you can send people video messages. You can send people audio messages, but you have to be connected first. It can be interesting and separate you out to use an audio message or a video message. A lot of it comes down to the details of who you're talking to, why you're talking to them, what your call to action is. And using different kinds of messages they're just different tools in your tool belt. In most cases, I would not do it because it's an additional burden to your prospect or whoever you're trying to build a relationship with to have to switch to a different mode of operating to engage with you. And generally, when you see voice messages used, they're most often used by people who run businesses, talking to their assistants or helpers or team members because they can't be bothered to type out their message and they find it easier to just say it.
Right.
And that team member then has to listen to that message once. Maybe doesn't get a piece of it, has to listen to it again. So it's more efficient for the person giving the message, and it's less efficient for the person receiving it. Now you might say, hey, if I do a voice message, not only is it differentiated, but also I can send out unique messages to each person. One thing that I've experienced on LinkedIn, which I think is going to be very surprising to a lot of people, is that customizing your messages does not necessarily do a lot to improve your outcomes. And almost intuitively, everyone would think it would be the opposite. I think what's much more important when running outreach on LinkedIn is to be very concise, which is short messages, to be very direct, and very actionable. Every message you send, you want the person who you're talking to know exactly what you want them to do next. And they can decide not to do it, but it needs to be clear. And the easier it is for them to know what to do next, the easier it is for them to then do it. And not everyone's going to. But the beautiful thing about running active outreach on LinkedIn is the self-selection bias. Only a certain percentage of people you send connection requests to are going to accept those invites. Yeah. Only a certain percentage of people who you connect with are going to engage with a certain call to action that you have. Does your call to action make sense? Is it going to add value to that person? Is it going to be innately appealing? Does it require more explanation? Is it not appropriate for the platform? These are all important questions to consider when crafting your strategy.
Wow. I mean, man, that's why we have you on the show. You're the guru. When setting up your page, and building your presence and such online, we talked about, you said long posts with the picture and stuff.
At least one.
Yeah, at least one picture. Now, typically, you were saying people should be standing by their stuff and smiling and stuff.
Yep.
Now, that doesn't necessarily work for all creatives.
True.
As a photographer, I'm taking a picture of something. The point is to show that picture. Yeah. I'm a videographer. The point is to show that video. Can't necessarily be standing, hey, here's my video.
That's right.
So what I'm trying to get at is are there any other ways that for like a person who can't actually get in front and smile, like that LinkedIn would actually like their posts?
So there's a lot of factors that will go into make a post successful or not. And no one factor matters on its own entirely, but they're all contributors, right? So you don't need to be in your post for them to do well, but it can help if you're in your post. It can help if you're smiling in your post, right? So if you're not able to do that, well, those are then two things you can't take advantage of, but there's still so many others you can. You can still write a really nice description. You can still make sure that you're picking out content that's going to be captivating. Every piece of content generally follows a storyline framework. And that means that there's a hook, a conflict, and a resolution. And again, not every post has to follow the formula, but those that do perform better.
Mm-hmm.
So a post that doesn't have a good hook is very unlikely to make it off the ground. A post that has a great hook and doesn't have those other components might actually still do decent.
Yeah.
The hook matters a whole lot more than the rest of it. But when you tell a story that has all those components, it can be especially compelling and generate even more shares, even more comments. Whenever you're posting, it's really important to just put yourself in the mind of whoever might be scrolling through your post and trying to capture what they might think and what might lead them to stop and comment or stop and like. And one thing that really motivates people stopping and commenting or liking is sharing a belief with you. So you'll notice increasingly, people complain about how LinkedIn's going more and more like Facebook because people are posting content that they would normally post on Facebook around politics, around their beliefs, around their personal lives and their personal journeys. And part of the reason why so much of that content is showing up on LinkedIn, and I'm not going to take a position here on whether it should or shouldn't be there, just I'm going to comment on its existence, is that that kind of content gets engagement. And if I scroll through my feed and I see a bunch of posts from people I don't know, but then I see one post that reflects a belief that I have, like maybe the belief is, we should consider not working on Fridays. Well, that's going to appeal to every employee ever. And most of LinkedIn's employees, because most professionals are employees. Oh man, I like that belief. I know it may not work for me and my company, but I support it. Like, comment, done, right? So whenever possible, one other thing you can always be thinking about is how can I convey and make it very apparent right away in my hook that I'm conveying a key belief that is going to broadly resonate with the people who are likely to see my piece of content. Sometimes it's also valuable to simply tell people what you want. If you ask people to share your post, they're much more likely to do so. One thing that we might get around to talking about is newsletters. I always talk about the importance of when you're building a newsletter to have a call to action at the end and to not have no call to action or two calls to action, but one. And to always have something you're asking for from your audience. Because if you ask something from the people who are consuming your content, it gives them something to do, which means that you're going to get more engagement from that action. And it also makes them feel closer to you. There's this thing in psychology where, if I have a student, let's say a high school or college junior, and they say, hey, Chris, I'm looking at getting an internship, and my dad knows you, and he recommended I talk to you because I know that you give advice to students on how they go about their job-seeking internship journey.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to help me out? I'm never going to see this kid again. He's never going to help me in my own career journey. I'm never going to get paid by him. But I help him because I find it fulfilling. And it actually improves my mood, improves my day to have the opportunity to help that student.
Yeah.
When your audience is given the opportunity to do something small to help you, even if it's very clear it's just to help you, they actually feel closer to you and more invested in you and in your journey by participating. So give your audience the opportunity to do that.
So like polls, surveys, all those kind of things you would think?
All kinds of things. You could ask them to share. You can ask them to like. You can ask them to comment. You can ask for their feedback on something. You can do polls and surveys. You can seek out a piece of advice. Lots of different options. And I could keep going.
Like recommendations, and stuff like that. Like, hey, I need something done over here. Does anyone recommend somebody for this?
Yeah. Very true. Very true. Awesome. So in the LinkedIn world, we can create articles. Yes. You mentioned that a little bit earlier too. In my experience, I've created maybe like one or two articles and such, put a little hashtags in it. And I've noticed every once in a while, I'll get somebody new, a new like or interaction and such. I mean, what are ways that people can use articles to really draw more people onto their LinkedIn page?
Yeah. So you can set up newsletters on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn has this interesting thing that it does, where when you set up a newsletter, every one of your connections will be invited to the newsletter by default by LinkedIn. So I have 15,000 LinkedIn connections. I know it's a large number.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And I know it's crazy, but there's reasons for it. And if I was to set up a newsletter, I haven't set up my own LinkedIn newsletter, every single one of those people would get an invite in that area where they normally see connection requests saying, Christopher Gittings is inviting you to the Leveraging LinkedIn newsletter. And you would have the option to ignore or accept that invite. Then every person who subscribed to my newsletter will get an email from LinkedIn whenever I post that to that newsletter. So if you have a larger network, that's a cool, just additional touch point you can have with your network.
That's amazing, especially 15,000. Like, sheesh.
Yeah. You can only have 30,000 total, so you have to be careful.
Yeah.
In general, by part of the reason I am always practically building my network is I know there are a lot of people out there who benefit from knowing me. To speak to that earlier point around what's the point of a salesperson, I'm a salesperson. I run a company, but a big part of my role is acquiring business. I host a lot of different types of gatherings I know people are going to be interested in participating in, whether they're executive lunches or professional mixers, and or my virtual networking group or my virtual peer advisory group. And I'm finding people who I know are going to benefit from being a part of those things, and I'm inviting them. I'm also going to people who register for my webinars, and I'm connecting with them and saying, hey, I'm excited to have you join us for the webinar next week. And that's an extra touch point with them that makes them much more likely to show up to the talk, and also allows us to maintain a relationship that might lead towards them working with me someday. So that's part of what's fueling that increase. But yeah, then you have a large network that's filled with the kind of people you might do business with. You can use a newsletter to engage those people, LinkedIn newsletter. But I would not, replace a email newsletter with a LinkedIn newsletter. I would only do a LinkedIn newsletter as a supplement. Your email newsletter should be where your core effort is being focused.
So you would say you have your regular newsletter that you would send out once a month, but then you maybe could repurpose that same newsletter, but into LinkedIn space.
Exactly.
Too. Okay.
And it might reach some other people who might not be on your email newsletter.
Now, I'm not familiar with the newsletter thing. Like, is there a certain section of the LinkedIn that you go to find the newsletters, or where do they populate?
So everyone open up your LinkedIn account. On the home page, on desktop, on the left-hand side, there's a section that says events, newsletters, and several other things in the bottom left. And you'll see it there. You click newsletters, and you'll be able to see what newsletters you're subscribed to. And there'll also be a button there that gives you the option to set up your own newsletter. Additionally, if you have a company page, because when you set up a newsletter, you could set it up as yourself, or you could set it up as your company page. And that's something I didn't talk about earlier, company pages, right? If you're a content creator, right, you have Tato Dads and Images. You have your own profile, Tato Dadson, but you also have the company page, Tato Dads and Images. You want to create a company page on LinkedIn. You might have content that shows up there. When you set up an event on LinkedIn, you have the option to set up an event as your company page or as yourself, and same thing for your newsletter. If you set up your newsletter as your company page, all of the company page's followers are going to be invited to that newsletter versus your connections. So you'll want to decide what makes sense for you there as far as, are the right people in your follower list on your company page versus on your page. When you set up your company page, there are two things you really want to consider. One is that you want to make sure that when you go to your own profile, your company page shows up next to that work experience. You want to say, I'm president of Tato Dads and Images, and then have a gray box where your logo should be, because you haven't linked your company page to your work experience. If you created your company page after you set up your work experience, you want to go into your profile, click the pencil icon, open that up, and then delete Tato Dads and Images and begin retyping it. And from the drop-down menu, Tato Dads and Images' company page should show up. You click on it, and it will then link the two, such that when people visit your profile, they can click on that icon, and it will take you to the company page on LinkedIn. So, if you have a company page and you view the company page, there's also a spot on there where you can create a newsletter as well.
Very good.
Now, what about for people that are on LinkedIn? They might be in a job right now, but they're starting up their own business or something like that. So most of their connections are like geared towards this industry, but now they're trying to target this industry. Would you recommend keeping all of those contacts, like trying to orchestrate something that would appease both kind of people that they're now going to be connected to, or how would you recommend all that handled?
Yeah, there are some things that will happen in your professional journey that don't have easy answers and that do work against you. If you worked in the property management space and your connections were all real estate professionals, and then you decided that you're going to become a wedding planner. And honestly, that would actually work out well, because I bet people buying homes are also maybe getting married, and we'd have to come up with a different example. But if you have a lot of connections that are totally irrelevant to what you're doing with your new business, that is going to weigh on the success of your posts, and it is going to weigh on the success of really anything you do on the platform that's algorithmically determined. And there's just no two ways about it. You can remove those old connections, but it's really laborious to do. I think sometimes it's important to ask yourself key questions around what really matters and what's worth your time. And you might find that the right strategy for you to invest your time in that's going to grow your business might be different from somebody else who even has a very similar business, because their environmental circumstances are different. One person might have more time on their hands. They might be like, I'm going to start a podcast because I have time to speak with guests. Another person might be like, hey, I'm going to really focus on my email newsletter, because even though my connections are all in a different industry on LinkedIn, I have a lot of email addresses of people who I know want to do business with me in my new role. So when you're figuring out the right thing to do for your business and figuring out what your call to action is when you're building relationships, when I talk to businesses and they say, hey, Chris, I run this kind of company, what strategy should we be using on LinkedIn to grow? I usually don't give them one answer. I'll say, here are 4 or 5 different approaches that could make sense for you. Sometimes I'll give more or less. Sometimes it's just 1 or 2. And I leave it open-ended, because there are factors beyond my knowledge that are going to have an impact on what's going to be best for them, that they need to plug into and understand to help them figure out what the best strategy is going to be.
Nice. So we talked about the different strategies with LinkedIn and such. What do you recommend for people to do when they want to cross-promote? Like Facebook?
Cross-platform.
Yeah, there you go.
There's a bunch of things. So one thing I'll speak on here is talks, organizing talks. I like to organize talks. I like to have other people organize talks. Ooh. I think organizing talks on LinkedIn is very effective for a lot of businesses, especially for a larger network, or if you have a large team. And we probably don't have reasons, we don't have time on this talk on this podcast again to why, but the larger your network is and the larger your team is, the more effective your talk's going to be, because of the strategies you're going to use to promote your talk on the platform. When you set up a talk on LinkedIn, you have several options. One is that you can set up a link to a Zoom call or some other video platform off LinkedIn, or you can use something called LinkedIn Live. And when you set up a LinkedIn Live, your webinar sits in LinkedIn on the event page. In order to set up a LinkedIn Live, you need to use a third-party streaming tool. I like to use StreamYard. If you use one of these streaming tools, you will have the ability to co-stream your talk to every platform. You can go live on YouTube, you can go live on Facebook, you can go live on Twitch, you can go live on LinkedIn, all at the same time. And these third-party tools will manage how you're able to see the comments that are coming in and the engagement that's happening on each platform. So that's one way to cross-promote very, very directly. If you post a piece of content on Instagram and then you come back, 3 weeks later and you're going to post that piece of content again, it's never going to do nearly as well the second time, because LinkedIn or Instagram, the platform, is going to go, aha, you posted that already. You're not allowed to put that out there again. That's old content. And that won't work. LinkedIn and Instagram aren't talking to one another. So if you're putting out a piece of content on Instagram and it does well, you can put it on LinkedIn too. Now, it's important to understand that every platform not only has different people who are going to see your content in a different kind of culture, but they also work different as far as what their algorithms promote or don't promote. So when you adapt cross-platform, it's really important to not just post for its own sake, but to really think critically around how you might be able to translate a piece of content from one platform to another. There's one creator right now who I'm really interested in. His name is Mike Raffi, and he is a lawyer in Georgia. And he's a personal injury attorney. Personal injury attorneys are fun because there are laws preventing them from soliciting clients. So if you find out that someone's been injured, you can't run up to them and say, hey, you should work with me and I'll help you get your money. The government doesn't want people who are being in a vulnerable situation to be preyed upon by a bunch of attorneys. So if you're a personal injury lawyer, your only choice is to create content, and lots of it. And that's why when you drive down the highway, you see billboards, and the most common billboard you see is personal injury attorneys of all people. And they always look really like over the top, and you're like, does that really work? That seems ridiculous to me, right?
I have a personal favorite.
Exactly. They're always funny. They have fun jingles. They have funny characters. They're trying to be memorable because when you're injured, it's really important to them that they're the first person you think of and that you just go, you know what? They seem crazy, but I'm just going to make the call.
Yeah.
Because even if they don't take the business, if they refer it to another attorney, they get a huge cut of that attorney's fees just for being the original person who that business went to. And so there's some attorneys who don't even have clients, and their entire business is around acquiring clients to push to other attorneys. And that's like a whole business model. It's crazy. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent there. I'm going to reel it back in. And we are talking about, personal injury attorneys. So one thing that this person does is he puts out YouTube shorts where he speaks on people's legal questions around how trials work, how insurance companies work, how personal injury works, how law works, all kinds of topics. And he doesn't need to come up with his own content because his audience comments what they want to hear about, and then he just responds. Every one of his videos on LinkedIn gets 30,000 to 100,000 likes, let alone views. Probably 1 million, 2 million, 3 million views on every post. He's being sent business up the wazoo. On LinkedIn, he puts out the same content because I became really interested in this guy and how, as a professional, he's leveraging a platform that isn't typically used that kind of way. And actually, I reached out to him on LinkedIn. I found him. One thing that's really interesting about LinkedIn is you'll find entertainers and professionals like YouTubers who have LinkedIn accounts but have almost no engagement there, who you can actually have conversations with by reaching out to them on LinkedIn, where you'd never be able to reach them otherwise. If you're have someone to ask them or you're a fan and have some like productive reason to say hello. And so I reached out to Mike Raffi and I was like, hey, what program, what's your process for creating these shorts? Like, do you use an agency? Like, how do you go about creating these? And he said that he does them, they do it all internally. And so then I'm connected to him. And I begin seeing his posts on LinkedIn, which are the same as the ones on YouTube. And they're getting 4 to 8 likes every time. And it just goes to show that the format and the audience really matter. Experimentation matters, but also care in your experimentation. Some platforms are more forgiving than others. On TikTok, you can put out all kinds of content and experiment. It doesn't matter if your last post did poorly. If your new post, what TikTok will do is, in good faith, any piece of content you put out, they'll put in front of 200 to 500 people. And they'll gauge how engaged those people were. And if they were engaged, they'll send it to some more people and be like, how did that work? And if people liked it then, they'll put it out to more. And you could be a nobody and put out an interesting piece of content and get millions of views. And then you can put out another video and get 300 views again, right? The platform's super forgiving. LinkedIn is not very forgiving. Do not just put out content on LinkedIn just for the sake of it, hoping that you'll get engagement. Be intentional. Look at what other people are doing and try to figure out what's going to work best for you by taking the best of their ideas and then twisting them and making them your own. I was talking, I had this one influencer client 2 years ago. It was a very zany character. And he had hired an Instagram influencer to advise him on his strategy. And I was posting for him, which meant that I, for free, got to talk to this influencer who he was paying to influence him on how to post better. And I met with this guy, and he was super interesting. We only talked for like 10 minutes because that was all we were allocated. But I got several key things that I learned that were important. And the biggest thing that stood out to me was how he said that when you post online, you never want to invent. You always want to innovate. Never try something new just to try something new, because everybody's doing that. Whatever cool secret strategies exist, someone's already found. Look at what's doing well in the space you want to be operating with creators that are targeting the audience you want to target. Find out which of their posts are doing the best and why. And then say, how can I do that for me in a way that's authentic to me and my brand? That's the secret to posting in general. And that works on every platform. So if you're like, okay, Chris, you're giving me advice on how to use LinkedIn more effectively, but then what do I do on Instagram? What do I do on Facebook? You follow that formula, you'll be successful everywhere you go.
That's wonderful. That's solid advice right there. It might help me out too. The Sales Navigator.
Yeah.
We can touch a little bit on that. I'm not too familiar with Sales Navigator. I mean, how would a person like myself, a creative, be able to use Sales Navigator to connect with people on LinkedIn, build my presence or build relationships?
So anybody who is seeking to proactively build relationships, period, should be using LinkedIn to do it, and should be using LinkedIn Sales Navigator specifically to do it.
Right.
Now, LinkedIn Sales Navigator is not a cheap tool. It costs $100 a month paid to LinkedIn if you do it monthly, $80 a month paid to LinkedIn if you lock yourself in annually. You're able to get a free trial through the platform. Usually LinkedIn will give you 1 month for free. You can get 2 months for free by getting a referral code from an existing user. LinkedIn will allow anyone who has Sales Navigator to give out 10 referral codes, and they don't get any benefit for sharing them, but of course the end user can get 2 free months, which is nice. It's an expensive tool. Why did LinkedIn make Sales Navigator? What does it do? Why does it exist? What's the deal? Well, we know that social media platforms in general make their money through selling user data, right? The users are the product, and through advertisers paying for the privilege to put their content in front of users, especially targeted users. Okay, great. LinkedIn would like to go a little bit further. They don't just have a news feed, they also have a bunch of user profiles. And your profile on LinkedIn is essentially your resume, just kind of reformatted. So LinkedIn's like, what can we do to monetize that? Well, recruiters would probably benefit from having additional tools that help them identify people that might be a fit for the companies that they're working for. Let's create a tool called LinkedIn Recruiter. Charge these recruiters a lot of money a month, more than whatever it is for Sales Navigator, and make it easier for them to find candidates for roles. Done. Now there's LinkedIn Recruiter. Let's take this further. Who else might be benefit from being able to target people according to criteria you might find on their profiles? Salespeople. Let's create Sales Navigator. That's the point of Sales Navigator. So LinkedIn builds Sales Navigator. And it's really interesting because Sales Navigator has its own inbox. So you have a LinkedIn inbox, and then when you get set with Sales Navigator, you actually have a separate inbox called your Sales Navigator inbox. And that looks weird. You're like, I already have an inbox. Why do I need 2? LinkedIn wants you to separate out your sales role from your personal career development. They think of LinkedIn as a place where you build your career and build your networking relationships that advance your career journey. Because again, we're business owners, but most people are employees. And then Sales Navigator is where you focus very narrowly on, I'm a salesperson, I sell these products, I'm going to build relationships around that. Now, as we talked about, I think during our last time together, there are so many different things that can make someone a salesperson, right? Like seeking a job makes you a salesperson.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to play around with there. And Sales Navigator grants you access to additional targeting criteria and additional workflows that just make it way easier to identify people who you want to reach and then to actually reach out to them at scale. So someone in your shoes, right? Well, you offer a lot of different services in your business. So let's pick out one service offering that you have that you might want to, put out more, and we'll run an exercise around it.
Let's try. Here's a fun one. How about we do photo booths?
Photo booths.
That's a very obscure. It's not your conventional thing. But photo booths.
I love that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're doing a photo booth, the idea is an event will rent your services to manage that photo booth and to bring the equipment, such that people at the event can print pictures of themselves with their friends. There might be props involved, right? Great. Are you very specifically seeking to only work with a certain kind of client, like wedding planners, or could it be any event?
It could be any event, corporate events. It could be wedding clients.
Great, yeah. So in your case, I think the most cost-effective approach would be to target people who are involved in planning a bunch of events. So anyone who's a wedding planner, off the bat, got to build relationships with all of them. And in this case, you innately add value because they may already have a go-to photo booth vendor, but what's the harm in knowing a second one? There might be a day when the first one isn't available because they're already booked or because someone got sick or because their equipment broke down. I can't leave my client who has the wedding stranded,
Yeah.
I got to call my backup. So they all recognize that innately. They all want a relationship with you. You can approach them very directly and say, hey, I'm a resource to wedding planners who would benefit from having another photo booth vendor in their book. I'd love to take 15 minutes to get properly acquainted. Done. Great. In addition, anyone who's a conference organizer, those are targetable by job title, right? Anyone who labels themselves an event planner or an experience creator. There are certain businesses that are event planning businesses that are entirely tailored around hosting events. Now, some people might say that my business is that, but the reality is the event planning part of my business, I kind of treat like a hobby, and it's not a financial contributor to our business. It's something I do out of passion. So there are businesses out there that entirely, sustain themselves off of organizing conferences or off of organizing events. And, event directors, just go down the list, reach out to everyone and say the same thing. And I think your returns, would be really, really good. And you might look at what I just said and say, Chris, that sounds like really simple. Like it sounds too simple. Are you sure it's going to work? There's beauty in simplicity. Mm. And when people trip over themselves so often by highlighting the features of their offering and the benefits and the turnaround times, and they're missing where the true value is in their product and offering oftentimes. And that value can be very low level, like, hey, I already have a photo booth vendor, but having a second one makes my life better and allows me to manage my clients better and ensure that they don't miss out on a key service that they expect to be provided. So sometimes that's the offering, and you need to get past yourself and past the fact that you have the latest and greatest photo booth system or the fact that you have the best props that make you special. Right. Because ultimately that's where the value is being added to that partner that's going to refer you into their clients.
Less about the, I'm so great, I'm so cool. Yeah. More about like, hey, we got this. If you guys ever need any help, be happy to help, kind of.
Well, one example I'll go through very quickly that I always find fascinating is people who run executive peer advisory groups. Now, I run a free peer advisory group virtually, and I've been running it for over 4 years. But there are people who run paid peer advisory groups like Tabs and Vistages, and there's other organizations as well out there. And sometimes, some of these organizations are clients of mine. I love working with people who run peer advisories. But when you talk to them and you ask them, what do you think makes someone motivated to become part of your peer advisory? They'll say things like getting business advice, having accountability, being able to take advantage of their platform that gives them access to other business owners. And I'll tell them like, hey, that stuff is fine, but I actually think that you're missing the mark. And of course, these are opinions, right? But I'm like, the main reason why business owners love to join a peer advisory is that they want to make friends with other business owners like them in their area. And this is the easiest way for them to do it. And once you realize the core thing that's really motivating your customer to buy, it totally changes the language you're going to use on LinkedIn to approach them and to get them to engage with your offering.
That's really awesome, man. Well, I mean, you've shared a lot of solid and great advice for people marketing themselves. I mean, networking with people on LinkedIn is truly a value because I think LinkedIn is really an untapped resource for creatives. I mean, would you say so, Naomi?
Yeah, there's a lot of people on there, but you don't see as many people engaged sometimes in reaching out, especially if they're a new business and stuff.
Right. So, I guess you hit a lot of great points, man. I mean, I don't really see anywhere else where we can add on to this aside from adding a whole nother episode,
That's right. Yeah, we can do a whole other episode, but probably a lot for people to digest today.
Yeah. So I think that's great. Thank you again, Chris, for joining us. Again, let the people know how can they get in touch with you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us. I'm Christopher Gittings. You can find me on LinkedIn. And if you do reach out to me on LinkedIn, send me a connection request and let me know that you found me on this podcast. Beyond that, you can also find me online at cogentconnections.io. That's our company's website, and you can see the stuff we're working on there.
Awesome. Great. Well, I'm your host, Tyler Datson. I'm here with Naomi. Right?
Hi.
All right. And you have joined us for 23 Journeys, a network for creatives. Have a great day.